say that, but I will get to put you on the hot seat a little bit today. A special thank you to American Family Insurance, Jake Davison, for making this series possible. And a thank you to our Chamber of Commerce, particularly their advocacy committee that sees true value and importance for the community to be able to have access to our elected officials. Again, last week was our 2 of our county commissioners, and this week it is our mayor. So we get a chance to talk to you, kind of get a little bit of the state of the cities, maybe a little bit. And then if you're out there and you have questions, please put them in the chat. There will be time after, we'll leave enough time at the end to ask questions, but as they chat, questions may come up. So please put them in the chat and Rosa will be monitoring that. A special thank you to Rosa. She puts all of this together at the chamber and she does it with great ease. So we're thankful to be here today and I'll get things started. So I'm going to ask you both the same question, and Jerrilea, I'll start with you. When were you elected to be mayor of East Wenatchee? And looking a little back on 2021, what were some big themes that the city did in 2021 that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, thank you. So I was elected in 2018 and started my first term as mayor in 2020. Sometimes it seems like just yesterday, and other times it feels like I've been doing this a really long time. So, but I'm having a lot of fun. I think after 2 years now, I finally am getting a rhythm and understanding deeper the role. It was an interesting first year, and it was funny because one time I reached out to Mayor Kuntz because, of course, when COVID hit, and I was like, what am I supposed to be doing with this? And he goes, you have just as much experience in this as I do. And that was true. We were figuring out a lot together. And just because I was a new mayor didn't mean that anybody else had a playbook for this and that I could just steal ideas from everybody. We were all learning together. But to answer the rest of your question, 2021 was obviously still an interesting year with COVID, but we made progress in a lot of our goals, and it was a time that we could, actually get out of the COVID mindset and start to go, okay, we're going to be living with this anyway. How do we work to accomplish some ideas and move forward? So one of our biggest things that we did in 2021 was we developed a strategic plan for East Wenatchee, and that has been hugely helpful in establishing what we want to do as a community and what we want to do in the future in 21, 22, 23, and as we move on. Did you want me to go into more of the accomplishments, or is that kind of what
you're going to get to in a little bit?
Okay, perfect.
Okay, Mayor Kuntz, you're up.
Same question?
So the same question, when were you elected to office?
I don't remember, but I'm 2 months into year 11. So
okay.
Someone can figure out that math.
That works. And some big themes in 2021 that the city had.
Well, I think for 2021, looking back, I think, with COVID going on, I think one's surviving and trying to figure out how to get through it all. Secondly, I know something we'll talk about a little bit is sort of this CARES funding and can you keep your city where you're at financially from the start to the end, and are you in a better spot, and we've accomplished that. And I think for us, we've been thinking really big on North Wenatchee Avenue with a second bridge across the Wenatchee River, something called Confluence Parkway. And the fact that the federal government looked at that project and awarded us $92 million, the largest infra grant in that round of projects out of $1.5 billion or so. The fact that they recognize the city of Wenatchee for its great work and in putting together a transportation project that will affect our community for generations. Pretty proud of that fact. Continuing to work to get the rest of the funding. But I look back at 2021 and say, maybe in 10 years from now, we'll look back and go, that was a pretty remarkable year, the year we got funding for Confluence Parkway.
Great. Well, so here comes the $1 million question, literally. The American Rescue Plan, ARPA funds. So now in light that you have some better guidelines for ARPA funds, How do you see these distributions, and how do you see them specifically helping not only our communities, but our regions? How does ARPA right now kind of look to you? And Frank, I'll start with you if that's okay, and then bounce to Jerrilea.
Yeah, I think for those sort of listening, we really didn't know when we got awarded this $6.6 million. And I think East Wenatchee got less than us. It was based on population. As the federal government can only do, they gave us the initial guidance was very restrictive. And so we worked pretty hard with Congresswoman Schreier and others to sort of get those restrictions lifted. And there's two ways to get them lifted. One is to get the law changed, or the second is to get guidance from the Department of Treasury. And lo and behold, in November, we got guidance from the Department of Treasury that basically said the first $10 million of ARPA funds you get, you can sort of do whatever you want to with. And so if the city got 6.6, that means we can do sort of whatever we want to with our 6.6 million. We'd already been working down a path to sort of help some of our nonprofits. So we've already given money to the YWCA. We gave money to Women's Resource Center and a few other organizations to help with the homeless and housing issues. And now we've got a couple of projects we're working on. We're going to be redoing Lincoln Park to the tune of $3.5 million. Not all of that city funds. We got a lot of grants, but we'll probably spend $1 million of ARP money in Lincoln Park. YMCA is looking at a new facility in somewhere in our area. We've committed $500,000 to a new YMCA, and hopefully some of the other governments will help get some money their way. YMCA's, especially newer ones in communities, are really game changers. Yakima, Olympia, other areas. So, and then I think we're just sort of trying to figure it out. We're trying to save some money to partner with other agencies on bigger things if some big things sort of pop up. But we're thankful to have it, and we'll get it out in the community over the next couple of years in different various projects. And as I told Congresswoman Schreier when they were looking at this, and she was asking what would we do, my comment was, I think we'd actually go out and do stuff we've already started doing, but we're scared to do because we don't know how COVID is going to affect us. Lincoln Park is one that, in the throes of COVID, I don't think we would have committed city dollars to finishing that project because we were just going to try to hunker down and save. So I think this does give us the chance to keep the economy going and keep things going in our community.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, Mayor Crawford.
Yeah, the ARP funds, it's kind of scary getting that much money and the guidelines not knowing exactly how that would play out. But our commitment in East Wenatchee was to make that money spread out as far as we could. We wanted to be very intentional of how we use those funds. So we kind of broke it into 3 different pots, and we received just a little over $3 million for East Wenatchee. And we kind of, like I said, broke it into 3 pots. And one pot is for out to the community to, help those struggling businesses or those agencies that really suffered from COVID, or were helping to rebuild us and help us out of that pandemic. Another pot was to help the city because there was some expenses and some setbacks that we had here at the city, and for us to be able to continue and provide services to the community. So that pot was set aside for that. And then another pot, we know that we get to spend this money down the line. We have to have it completed by 2026. So we didn't know what COVID would still do, or maybe where there were some hidden needs that hadn't revealed themselves. So we set some aside, knowing that there will be some issues that come up in the future, and we want to be able to respond to those, whether they be internal within the city or if it's part of our community that needs some help. Like Wenatchee, we also have contributed some funds already. I think we've distributed about $200,000 of ARP funds back out into the Wenatchee Valley. YWCA, our Parks Department, we don't have our own Parks Department like Wenatchee does. It's a separate agency, we were able to help with some funds to them. Volunteer attorney services, the Women's Resource Center, a lot of the same ones, but that's what I like. You know, so many of the businesses and agencies in our community aren't, you know, they may be located on the Wenatchee side of the river, but that doesn't mean that it's the city of Wenatchee's entire responsibility to help, because they're servicing our greater region. So we're grateful that we could also share in some of those needs and help, even though, like I said, the YWCA may sit over and on the Wenatchee side, we recognize that they're helping our folks as well. So we're still accepting applications for people who have needs. We have a committee made up of 3 council members, myself, and some staff members that evaluate those applications as they come in. It's nice, the restrictions or how we can spend the money is, we feel a little bit more confident in the guidelines that have come out, that how we can share those funds. And so we evaluate those applications and try to get that money out now, because we know that, you know, sitting on it doesn't help anyone. So we're trying to distribute those as thoughtfully as we can. And then we'll evaluate as things go on. And we haven't determined what we'll be using the city of Wenatchee's bucket for yet. We have a long list. we could spend that money, you know, 15 times over and still have needs. So we want to be very thoughtful, and we haven't committed to that yet.
So I have a follow-up question on that. And in all fairness, I'll ask the same question I asked last week of the commissioners. When this information came out and it was passed down that you were getting this money, it was described to me in my world as a fire hose of money, right? The perception, because counties and cities where we're going to receive ARPA funds. So I think a follow-up question maybe for the business people out there listening, are there any surprises once you did get the sideboards you thought were on there or didn't think they were on there? For either one of you, and you can choose who answers this, were there some surprises once the regulation came out, and maybe some clarification to the community out there listening right now of those funds? You started to talk a little bit about the heart behind how you're going to distribute those funds, but what surprises or what things would you like the community to know about those funds that were kind of a surprise to you, maybe, or information?
I'll go ahead and take, I mean, I don't know that there was any surprises, you know, someone who deals with tax and IRS issues and federal governments regularly, the fact that they change their mind doesn't surprise any of us. We were excited that the flexibility came because there were some places and things that we wanted to get done that, again, not knowing. I just think for those from a 30,000 foot level, which is where I tend to want to play, I think if I was a business owner, the things that I would want to know is that your local governments are doing very well financially. And that includes the city of Wenatchee, the city of East Wenatchee, and both Chelan and Douglas County. We've never had tax receipts the way we have them now. We've never had money in our reserve accounts the way we have now. If you add the ARP money to the bucket, which for all intents and purposes, we can. And so a remarkable time in our region to really think about how you want us to leave that, because it is a remarkable time. If you add up, you know, if you say, well, Chelan County got 16 million and 10 million's in their general fund, and we got 6 million and 6 million's in our general fund, and Jerrilea the same, and Douglas, I mean, there is a lot of money at a time when our tax collections are also at a record pace. And so think about, I mean, it's a really incredible time to have that much money in your bank account. Just as a reference, when I became mayor, we had $2 million in our bank account. When you say that bank account, there's more, but in terms of our reserve balances that we use to sort of ebb and flow, and it's at around 16 million today. That's the account kind of money that we're talking about when you add the ARP funds. So we're all doing well. Now you just need to help us figure out what's the best thing to do in the community with those sorts of dollars.
And I agree with what Frank just said. I will add though, I mean, even, yes, financially, I think we're all very grateful right now that, I mean, we had a 19% sales tax increase year over year of about $780,000 more than we had last year. And that's just sales tax, right? That's not looking at the other funds. So yes, we feel comfortable. But on the flip side, some of the challenges is how expensive things have become. And so it's still hard to balance the, oh gosh, it's going to cost us this much money now to build a road when maybe before it wasn't quite that bad. So it is still a balancing game, and you still, at least I do, because I haven't done this as long as Frank, but I think, oh gosh, when does this money train end, right? I'm grateful for the money that we get, but I also am, very cautious that it doesn't mean that it's going to continue to flow this way. And I would rather not have a whole bunch sitting in a bank account, because that's not working for the community. Instead, if we can make those improvements and do the things that we want to do, but I also don't want to deplete what we have either, knowing that maybe in the future we won't have as many options or as much to fall back on. So it is still a challenge. Of course, it feels great. I'm so glad that this is the problem that we have. I mean, I'm grateful right now that we have quite a bit of money, and we're, instead of trying to scrape and figure out what we can cut in order to get by. So.
Well,
From someone who couldn't fertilize the grass when I was mayor and when I started in 20, whenever that was, this is a way better problem to have than the other one.
I don't want to leave that problem. I'm hoping that
totally got it. So Mayor Crawford, I'll start with you on this question because you kind of led us into it. So talk a little bit now, as we've looked kind of in the rearview mirror, let's look a little bit forward. In 2022, you started alluding to some challenges, but for business in particular, what do you see some challenges that you're hearing or that you're feeling, that you're seeing, or challenges facing not only business, but the city in 2022?
Well, and yeah, I did kind of allude to a little bit of it, and that's the expense of things. Just, oh gosh, I think it was probably about 4 years ago, East Wenatchee had started planning on a public works building. And 4 years ago, we thought that building would cost us around $6 million. Our bid came back and it was going to be more like 12 million. So in just a 4-year period of time, we had to completely regroup and go, okay, well, how do we trim the fat? What don't we need? And we're literally getting a 3-car garage for $6 million. And it's, and then, thinking ahead and the supply chains, and can we even actually build it? I mean, we might have the money to do what we've scaled down, but are the supplies there? So we do have some significant challenges that way with expenses. I think the other piece that I see as being a big issue, and I don't think it's just for the city itself or city staff, but businesses as a whole, but we have a huge staffing, I don't want to say crisis, but it certainly is a big challenge. And there's a lot of jobs out there that aren't getting filled, and we're moving people around, right? So I may fill a job, but it might be because somebody transferred over from Chelan County or Douglas County or the city of Wenatchee, and it just created a new hole in another agency. So we have jobs here that we haven't been able to fill. And they're really important roles, and they provide critical services to the city. But I know other businesses that are suffering the same way. Our medical facilities, for example, I think the staffing issue is going to be a challenge. We've, doing incentives to encourage people to apply, increased pay, offered more benefits, and we've become really creative, but it just means that we're kind of shuffling all those folks around. So I see that as being a problem for a while. And then the other challenge that I think we'll have in 2022, and I think this is for all of us, but I think particularly on the Douglas County side of the river, this will be a unique challenge, is growth. where I know there's 300 houses that I just heard about that are getting built over in East Wenatchee. And that's just one pocket. That's just one little area that's going to expand right away. There's several apartment buildings being planned, and growth is wonderful, but how are we setting ourselves up for that and being prepared and ready? And Douglas County has lots of space open to us. So how do we manage that and do well? But I think my mom, she grew up here. She came over for my birthday last month, and she was like, just in the 4 months that she hadn't been here, when she came back, she's like, I can count 3 huge developments that I didn't see before. So it just looks so different, which is great. We want to keep serving our community, but how do we prepare and be ready?
Sure. Okay, Mayor Kuntz, you're up.
When I look at things in the city and things that affect sort of business downtown, the first thing that comes to my mind and the things that I see regularly are struggles we have with the homelessness, mental health, drug abuse. You see it up and down North Wenatchee Avenue in the back parking lots. We've seen an encampment over and around the George Seller Bridge. That and how it affects our police department and our ability to hire additional officers. That is not only a local problem, but a statewide problem. So, over the weekend, as the folks moved from the one encampment under the George Seller Bridge, we had somewhere in the neighborhood of a half a dozen fentanyl overdoses over a 24-hour period. And so what your police department and your emergency services people do is they respond, they give them Narcan, they get them up to the hospital. These people get released a day later and go down and they do it again. And so unfortunately, there was one death, but those aren't the reasons why police officers got in the police business to begin with. Makes it difficult for us to hire additional officers, and then puts a strain on our community, in not only in the medical community, but our business community. And it's we've gotten handed a bunch of really bad laws from not only our friends in Olympia, but the Washington State Supreme Court, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. We are working hard with our partners in East Wenatchee to put together a low barrier shelter. We've got our location, but we can't seem to get a lease agreement from the entity that owns it, because they move at a glacial pace. And so all of it is a bit of a struggle. It's a struggle for those of us that are trying to help. I'm sure it's a struggle with the business owners that would like to not have that in their downtown and to some degree feel unsafe. There's more and more people coming here. That problem is getting worse, not better. We are doing the best we can. We're fortunate enough that, when I became mayor, we had 34 police officers. We're at 43 now, probably on our way to 45 or 46. So we've managed to add to our department, but what we're asking them to do is more and more and more. And that just concerns me, not only at a local level, but a statewide level as well, that we're falling further and further behind. And I want the folks listening to know that we are trying our best. It is not perfect. And we will continue to do the best we can, sort of with a bunch of bad laws. And it's just a tough situation to keep dealing with.
Yeah, you see it. You just have to turn the news on. Seattle News every night, you know. You're exactly right, Mayor. So Mayor Kuntz, I'll start with you on this one. You're elected to lead. Both of you are elected to lead. You didn't sign on. Mayor Crawford got a hot second before COVID hit. You didn't sign on, all crazy, but that's what you're elected to do. So in looking into this year, there are probably personal goals you have for yourself as a leader, but what are some things that you personally, incentives or something you're looking forward to this year, yourselves, as how you want to move the needle, maybe personally, in this role that you have, that you were elected to do? So Mayor Kuntz, I'll start with you.
I don't really have any personal goals. I think when I look at the city and I say, hey, if we could accomplish these two things during 2022, I would feel really good about. I would say first and foremost is getting the remaining funding for Confluence Parkway. We are $85 million short from building the bridge over the Wenatchee River. We've got over half the funding between the city contribution and contribution from the federal government. Your friends in Olympia are going to pass a transportation package that currently, as it sits today, does not include any money for Confluence Parkway. In fact, 1% of the funding is going to Eastern Washington and 99% of the funding is going to Western Washington. And they call it a statewide transportation package. Seems a bit odd to me, but again, trying to work with our friends in Olympia, and not always directly, sometimes it's indirectly. Sometimes the best way to do that is not directly, but sort of in the back channels. But trying to get funding for that is crucial need for us. And I think secondly, and again, it's the same project, but we are going through the environmental process under NEPA, and there'll be some public outreach. And I'm sure there'll be some folks that are going to question some of this, but on the same token, we have done a whole bunch of work on the environmental side to protect the Wenatchee area from noise and other sorts of issues. So in particular, the Chelan County PUD has got to weigh in at some point in time. And to the extent that any of us drive North Wenatchee Avenue and try to get to and from school, understanding, trying to get to the hospital from the north end, any of those sorts of things, to the extent that folks can stay engaged in that process and help the Chelan County PUD commissioners as they have to weigh in on this, they could actually stop the project if they chose to. So I would say for me, getting through the NEPA process, which has been going on for 3 years now, if we can wrap that up this year, and if we can magically find funding for the project. Someone once told me, they said, well, Mayor, you got to stay on until Confluence Parkway is built. And I said, no, I'm an accountant. I just got to get it paid for. Someone else can build it. And so if I can manage to find the money to get it done, then somebody else can build it. So that's what I'm looking forward to and trying to accomplish, hopefully in 2021 or 2022 from my 30,000 foot perch.
I love it. There's a question I'm going to ask you in a minute,
Okay.
but I'm going to go to Mayor Crawford to answer that, and then we'll come back. It's a homeless question. So Mayor Crawford, what are you looking for? What's your personal things you're looking forward to this year?
Well, besides making some progress on our strategic plan, now that we finally have that in place, I definitely don't want this just to be a static book that sits on the shelf that we're not referring to. So making progress on those goals that we have set out in there is really important to me to move the needle in 2022. But there's some fun things too that, I mean, there's the things that we must do, right? Like, we've got to continue with our projects. We have major street projects, Grant Road. If anybody drives on Grant Road, it's like you're skiing and going over moguls and bouncing around. So we have that project that we'll be working on. Fortunately, we received some grants for that, so that helps us immensely. So there's a lot of those projects out there that I want to get finished, but then there's the fun things that we want to do too, the things that get us back to our community and get us back to our quality of life that we've kind of been missing for the last couple of years. One event that people have loved in the Wenatchee Valley is the Wings and Wheels Festival. The festival has been more about wheels than it has about wings, and I would like to go back to celebrating the wings piece and why the festival existed in the first place, and that was to celebrate the flight of the Miss Vidal. So we have a great partnership with Pangborn, and we're looking to revamp that event and hold it up at the airport and bring in some fun aircraft, and they usually do an aviation day, so we'll be partnering with them and hopefully adding a cultural component to in partnership with our sister city in Misawa, Japan. So, and then also make some progress on a library. We've heard from people that they would like to see a larger library in East Wenatchee. It's currently right now at City Hall in our building here, but we're moving our police out. We're giving them a new building. Excited to have them have some more space and to grow. I think, how many, Mayor Kuntz, did you say you have commissioned officers?
We had 34 when I started. We have 43 today.
Okay, so yeah, so we see, you know, the growth, and we know East Wenatchee is going to be growing. We know our police department is going to be growing. I think we have 19 commissioned officers. So that, you know, we know that that will increase over time. So we have a new building for them, which frees up some space in our City Hall building. Hopefully we can do not only our Public Works building, but get a new library for the community. What that looks like and where that's at, we need community support and help. And I will be reaching out and looking for people who want to partner, who have a passion about their library and what they would like to see, and help us with developments and plans for that in a vision. But the biggest thing I think that we want to do in 2022 is continue our partnerships, grow those where we can, and be a strong supporter of our region as a whole. I appreciate the relationship that we have with Wenatchee and helping with our homeless situation, because it's not just Wenatchee's problem. I was grateful that both our city councils approved a 1% tax so that we could help to fund that sleep center and help those folks and get them transitioned into some permanent housing. So I'm looking forward to us being able to finish that. It's like Frank said, it's been very slow, but it's important work. And so the other partnerships that we have, just to find ways that we can contribute and help our valley, our future. I'm grateful that there's that organization that identifies some areas that we can all partner on together and work on a common goal. So those are some of the things that I'm hoping that we can do in 2022. We have a lot of hefty, big projects, like I said, construction projects and building projects, and you know, moving departments. So it will be a very busy year, very, very busy. So.
Well, thank you. So this question actually could work for both of you. So I don't know who wants to take it first, but the question in the question and answer was, in regard to the issue of homelessness, if the police are not the ones who should deal with the situation, which I totally agree with, who should be available to manage? Are social assistance agencies? Is it possible to fund the types of services that could reduce our homelessness? I don't know who wants it first, but there you go.
I'll go first, since I was the one that mentioned the concerns. I agree with the fact that it would be nice if our police officers weren't the ones that were involved in this all the time. But, you know, we have 43 officers, and almost every one of them are trained in crisis intervention. And so they're not social workers by trade, but their training is really good in these areas. And, you know, secondly, under the current laws, you know, they're not allowed to take anybody in. You can't touch anybody. You can't arrest anybody. So, you know, if I've got 6 officers on right now and 5 of them are trained in crisis intervention, and we get a call someplace, those are the people that are going to go first. Catholic Family has some outreach folks, as does Women's Resource Center. And so right now, yes, I think more crisis intervention people would be helpful. But all of this is, you know, in order for someone to be put in some sort of treatment center, it's got to be voluntary, or it's got to be a court system to tell them they need to go. And the court system isn't doing that. And very few of them are voluntarily going places. We do get some success from here and there. You know, onesie here, one there, 2 here. So there are some successes. But right now, your best bet is probably a City of Wenatchee police officer who's trained in crisis intervention, who shows up and does the best that they can to try to help. And along with, again, the outreach coordinators from the other places. You know, Catholic Family had a couple of really good ones. But that's a tough job. And sometimes you'll get two and then they'll move on to another place and the pay isn't great. And so it's you know, if you look statewide, when I first became mayor, I think Washington State was 47th out of 50 in spending per capita on homeless and mental health and drug and alcohol abuse. And now we're like 24th in the nation. So spending more money isn't necessarily fixing the problem, because over the last 7 or 8 years, it's gotten worse and worse and worse. And we're spending more and more money and the problem is getting worse. So it's not necessarily a money fix. Although, listen, some more transitional housing would be helpful and other things like that. But this is a very complicated social issue that is just going to take us a long time to try to get better.
Yeah, I'll add to that. I mean, I think a lot of times when we talk about homeless, we think of the people who are unsheltered and the extreme, and there certainly is that, but there's a whole lot of people who are couch surfing or they're, you know, living with their aunts and uncles or grandma and grandpa, and it's a whole generations of people in a maybe you know, just a 2-bedroom house or a 1-bedroom house, and you might have 12, 16 people living in cramped quarters like that. So we have that kind of homeless too. And it's absolutely challenging. And there isn't if we just did this, it would solve it. It's not just a city or a county responsibility. There's so many layers to it that it's really hard to wrap your mind around. And it's a little bit of everything, or a lot of everything, actually. I agree. I don't think police officers are the ones we would want to send in this situation, but like Frank was saying, it's the agencies that are out there to support and help. There's not enough, and a lot of times the problems that you might have could be at 2 o'clock in the morning, and those folks are just out already at 2 o'clock in the morning providing those services. So it is often police, and because the reason why they even get noticed is because sometimes there's a crime involved, right? But one of the things I wanted to point out for our accomplishments in 2021 is I think people don't always necessarily understand how much training our police officers go through. And this last year in 2021, there's a requirement for officers for the amount of training that they need to have. And every 3 years, they essentially need about 64 hours of training. East Wenatchee police officers last year, on average, training for our officers was 95 hours. It's a lot of training. And we're very committed to that and keeping them current. And that's not just training on dealing with homelessness or people who are struggling with mental health issues or addiction issues. It's a whole lot of training, but they are required to meet all this, the training requirements, which is very, very helpful. And it's current, and then we stay on top of it. So although it seems like an extreme to have police go, they are very well equipped to help and identify needs and concerns and steer them to the right agency to get them some help.
I think one of the things that the listeners might find interesting is starting later on this year, when Jerrilea gets her new police department organized, we will have 4 City of Wenatchee police officers driving to East Wenatchee every morning to go to work. So our special services division will be working out of the East Wenatchee office, along with the Chelan Douglas drug task force group. So there'll be Chelan County Sheriff's Deputy, Douglas County Sheriff's Deputy, a couple of East Wenatchee police officers, and 4 of ours doing what we call special services, which is things that pop up today that need to be dealt with immediately, including some of the gang activity and that sort of stuff. They did a big drug bust out in Soap Lake the other day, and some drugs are coming our way, and that group figured it out. And so the fact that we're working together with other regional law enforcement is pretty special. And the fact that we're going to do this regionally, and it doesn't matter where they're going to work. We're paying our guys, and Jerrilea's paying hers, and but we're fighting these issues regionally, I think is important as we need to continue to do more things regionally, like the Port Authority, like hopefully the 2 fire districts and more stuff between the 2 cities and the 2 counties.
So a couple more questions. This one, it's COVID related. I've talked to both of you over the course of the last 2 years. You had no control over the guidelines and regulations and restrictions, right? So we all wanted you to fix something that you couldn't fix. So now that it looks as though and appears that we're going into a new phase of a new normal in this COVID, maybe for both of you, what does that look like for your staffs? Areas of your offices that are open, and maybe Frank, you can update everyone on the facility that's upgrading the city hall. And then offices, as you've had to navigate offices open, offices closed, how is this looking now for you as we look into the next few months? So either one can take this.
I'll go first quickly. We are, our city protocols have been slightly more restricted than the governor's over the last little bit, but we are now actually, as of late last week. So if you're fully vaccinated and you're a city employee, you don't have to wear a mask at work. The only time you would have to wear a mask would be if you're dealing with the public in some manner. So we are starting to open up the restrictions that way. We will wait for the governor's March 21st deadline to sort of go even further. We've been meeting in person every time we've met, even in the toughest of COVID times. We all wore masks and we spread out in our larger city hall office space, and so we were able to do that. I think the plexiglass is probably going to be here to stay. Those things are sort of permanent installations. So I think we're starting to get to a point where we're going to loosen up. You know, it was an interesting time when the state had required vaccinations for workers. And so you saw a number of state patrol folks and WashDOT employees lose their jobs, unfortunately. And then that mandate did not apply to us. And so we were able to hire some of those folks. Not saying it's right or wrong. We're just trying to employ people and get the work done. And then finally, the federal government overturned, the Supreme Court overturned the President Biden's mandate. So those folks all got to stay and work for us. So we are not fully employed, but we are close. And then, of course, we are remodeling City Hall. We expect to be in the federal building more permanently with something close to 100 employees total, all the top floor of the our Public Works building, plus normal City Hall folks, maybe by October or November of this year, and are excited to have a community gathering place and a new City Hall chambers and sort of a one-stop shop for your building permit and pay your utility bills and sort of all things related to interacting with city government to be in one spot. We're excited for that.
So for us in East Wenatchee, we're there's been some good being able to be flexible and allow opportunities to connect with their cities. So only in person. I think we'll forever have Zoom options. So people, if they don't want to actually come in, they can still participate. Not like we get a lot of people who attend our council meetings either in person or on Zoom, but at least it's there. And there's sometimes that I think that provides a comfort level for people, regardless of COVID. It might just be because, they don't, know what's expected of them when to come into a council meeting and where to sit and how to engage. So I like that we have some flexibility and we'll keep those things in place. I think it's been interesting for us to identify which staff members can work remotely from home. I like staff being in at City Hall and accessible and available to other staff members or to the public, but it does allow us some flexibility. Or we've seen it can work to have staff members who need to work from home that it actually can work, and maybe it's a smart way to go to be flexible in recruiting staff members. So it doesn't mean all positions can do that, but some of them can. And as long as we have some systems in place to be productive and efficient, I'm happy with entertaining those changes and ideas. We also are masking at City Hall. We'll stay masked until the governor has lifted his mandate, which I think is the 21st. So we'll continue to mask, vaccinated or not. We don't mask in our offices unless we're with someone, and we'll continue to do that. And same, plexiglass is in place. I don't like it. We'll probably keep it permanently and maybe make it look more attractive than kind of these shields that we have up everywhere. But I think it provides a level, even if it's maybe not as effective as some people believe it to be. And I'm not going to argue whether it is effective or not. I think it helps people feel comfortable. I've noticed, people stand further away from each other now. And I think it's just become a new norm, and people don't want you in their bubble. I mean, I think everybody had a bubble before, and now that bubble's just a little bit bigger. So if it just makes people feel more comfortable, then we'll do that too.
So again, if you're out there and have a question, it'd be time to put it either in the chat or the Q&A. So my last question for you before we really open this up is, as a business community, how can we help you? I mean, typically you hear from people when they're mad, right? But how can we as a business community help you as mayors do your job and help the cities? How do we interact with you? What would you like to see?
I'll go first this time. Frank keeps taking it first. I think for me, it is communication. It's partnerships, and it's reaching out, good or bad. I don't mind hearing complaints. I don't mind hearing when people think that we've done something wrong and they're angry, or if there's a pothole that they think needs to be fixed. We can't be everywhere. We can't see everything. So hearing from the public is really crucial for me. But it is nice to hear the good things. So thank you when people do reach out and say something positive and say, oh, I think this is the right direction. But the engagement, whether it be serving on, a planning commission, or like I said, the library will be looking to start a Friends of the East Wenatchee Library group. People who are interested in serving that way is helpful for us, because I work for you. What do you want in your city? What do you want it to be? What are you hopeful for? I know I have ideas, but it doesn't mean it's what everybody else wants. So it's, for me, the businesses can continue to partner. The dialogue through OVOF, the surveys, when I know people hate filling out surveys, and I sometimes go, oh my gosh, another one. I feel like I just did this, but it is a way to express your opinions. And I rely heavily on our Valley, Our Future, because they've had some great success with their surveys. So when you see those, if you take a minute to do those, it helps the rest of us identify, yes, this is something that the community wants and is interested in. So just that constant involvement would be helpful.
Yeah, I'll say, yeah, I think involvement is important for us. Obviously, this environmental process with North Wenatchee Avenue, which is going to have a major public outreach. If I was a downtown business owner or any business owner, I would think that getting traffic moving along North Wenatchee Avenue would be important to us. And so, communicating that importance to those decision makers that have the ability to help implement, I think would be hugely important. And I know you don't all, there's sometimes there's this sort of inherent conflict that goes on in downtowns. Obviously we've got apple blossom festivals and runs and bike races and those sorts of things that sort of interrupt with business from time to time. I'll tell you this, the snowstorm we had on Wednesday, I think it was Wednesday, or maybe it was Thursday, January 7th. We all got whatever, 2 feet of snow. I was up at 4:30 in the morning talking with staff. We immediately had shut down our office buildings. And I think by 5:15, we had hired Pipkin and Selland to come in at nights. And I was down Friday night, so 36 hours later, and Wenatchee Avenue was clean. I mean, probably as clean as it's ever been. I mean, there was some snow in some places, but we got after it. And we got after it because it's important that our business community and we have access to our downtown. And you don't do that if you don't care. And so we do our best to try to make sure that we're promoting businesses in downtown and doing things to make it so people have access. We're always going to sort of bicker a little bit about parking, and we're going to bicker a little bit about these sorts of things. We're not always going to agree on everything. But on the same token, keep communication up, continue to I don't know how many emails a day and I read them all. So if you've got a thought or something, no question, give us an email. May not respond right away, but gives us some things to think about. And, I think your elected leaders care, and they want it to try to make it the best that we can for everyone who's here. Sometimes that's not always easy. For those of you that are listening, Jerrilea and I do chat weekly, I would say, and then we meet probably every 3 weeks for coffee or a longer discussion. And because East Wenatchee and Wenatchee, we're all hooked together, and what happens in downtown Wenatchee affects East Wenatchee, and what happens with them affects us. And so we're working as closely as we can to try to make it as best for everybody.
So I'll ask Rosa to put in the chat, if it's all right with both of you, your email addresses.
Yeah.
That's how you like to be communicated with, I'm guessing. So here's another quick question. We've noticed the roads were plowed super fast during Snowmageddon. Great work, City of Wenatchee. So that was, for, not that I remember, but it was a Wednesday night that we woke up Thursday morning. And yes, Mayor, you did call me. So yes, it was exactly, who knew, right? I guess then now it's 8:51. We have a couple more minutes before we let people get on with their day. I'm going to give you both a chance, maybe just a final statement, or this is the business community overall listening today. So what would you want us to know? Is there something you wanted to say? You get a chance to say one more thing.
All right, I'll go first this time. Listen, I'll just follow up with, we appreciate what you do. I probably have a unique experience being a tax accountant. And you can sort of see my desk over there. I get to meet and talk with a lot of you regularly. And so I think I have a pretty good pulse on the business community. I'd like to think things are going fairly well for most businesses in our town. And, we're here to support you. It's a partnership. It's a partnership between the business community and government. And we need to know what you guys think. And we're here to try to, work with you and try to make things better. We're working on, some different ordinances with all the different tents that were up that were clearly illegal during COVID. We're trying to work with those folks because obviously outdoor dining is now here to stay. And we're trying to work with streeteries and those things in downtown and try to, so far, so good. The ones that have gone up have been amazing. And so we just appreciate the partnerships and continue to try to work to make our community better. So thank you.
Yeah, I guess my statement would be, I think I would encourage, anyone who's listening that, we continue to think differently and tackle new problems in unique ways. I think about like roundabouts, right? And how frustrated people are about roundabouts. You see a roundabout mentioned on Facebook and after that, it's nothing but pure hatred for those things, right? But change happens, and how do we embrace it and think of unique opportunities and ways to deal with issues. We are a growing community. We can't help it. I know we love our memories of when we were little kids and we would walk through orchards to get to school, or, playing, in the foothills and hardly having any people up there around us. We would be the only ones hiking up to Saddle Rock, you know, and now it's everyone's up there. But we can't help it. Those growths are going to happen with or without us. But being mindful and doing it well and doing it together, I think, is really important, and embracing that change. And it doesn't mean that just because we've done tourism a certain way, that that's how we continue to do tourism, or just because we, you know, built roads a certain way doesn't mean that's how we need to continue to do them. And to be open-minded to thinking about that, that there's unique opportunities for us, and we get to build it, right? We get to do the things that we want to do in our community. Yes, growth is going to happen, but how can we embrace it and be the community we want to be? We maybe not have, you know, you won't have an orchard next door to your house or your business, but you know, what do you want it to look like, and instead, and what kind of community, what kind of neighbors do you want to have? So, but that's engagement, it's partnerships, it's still listening and being active and involved. And so I'm happy to participate in those dialogues and hear from you. Thank you for putting our email out there. I too tried to respond to everyone who emails me. Sometimes it takes me a while, but I'm committed to hearing your ideas and thoughts. And I just am grateful for the opportunity to get to work with the community. I love this community. That's the reason why I'm sitting here. Working at the chamber for many years, I think it put me in front of a lot of issues that maybe they weren't my issues, but they're someone else's, and I care deeply for everyone's perspective. And so I felt like this was a way to step in and help navigate and move us along, and continue to support the community that I love.
You know, COVID taught us that a lot of things we used to do, we couldn't do anymore. What's really hopeful for me is that you two have stayed connected through all of this and moved our community forward together. That is, I just applaud you both for that spirit of community you have, to know, as Frank, a rising tide does float all boats, right? You've told me more than once. So today we're going to give everyone 4 minutes back of their day. I ended on time. Thank you again to Jake Davison, American Family Insurance, for allowing this to go on in our Chamber of Commerce. We'll do more of these because I think it's really important that we get to hear from you. We get to hear from you and have a conversation. So thank you both for being transparent and open today. We truly appreciate it. Everybody go have a good day, because we're going to get there, right? A new normal. Woohoo! Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.